The Seahorse Effect by Sierra Steinbrecher. Chapter 4. On Kamino.
Right this way, please.
Anakin followed the Kaminoan, who led the Jedi to a semicircular room where one wall, the one that curved outwards, was floor-to-ceiling windows so he could look out over the whole facility laid out before him. The ground floor was crawling with clones, eating, putting on armor, talking, even boarding transports. He looked away from the area, buzzing with activity, passed over the classrooms where younger clones studied tactics, and looked up towards the circular shelving units for thousands of artificial wombs. He pointed towards them.
"I'd like to take a closer look at those,"
he said. As complimentary as ever, the guide bowed.
Right this way.
She, Anakin thought it was a she from the lack of a crest on her head, said and walked back into the hallway. They walked through one of the clear walkways crisscrossing in the higher levels of the facility and stopped when they reached a stretch with a better view of the wombs. Anakin turned and thanked his guide.
"I can find my way back to my room from here."
She bowed again and began walking along the hallway, but she paused and asked,
"What is it that you are here to study about the process or the clones?"
It was tempting to simply tell her to mind her own business, but Anakin thought better of it.
"I'm actually here to study the growth chambers."
He gestured toward the artificial wombs.
"Master Bant, one of our best medics, thinks they could be used to help bolster failing populations. I was sent to study them and see if it would be possible."
Her already enormous eyes widened.
"Is that so?" she asked. "I could have one sent to your room for you to examine, and any other materials you might find helpful. I can also supply you with information about our in vitro fertilization techniques."
"Score!" Anakin mentally fist bumped, but outwardly he just nodded. Then the rest of what she'd said caught up to him.
"Why would we need that?"
he asked, trying not to sound disrespectful. Bantering with Obi-Wan was all right, but this was not a race he wanted to alienate.
Couldn't we just conceive the fetus naturally and then transfer them to the womb?"
"No, Master Jedi. The shell of the womb, the outside filament, acts as an artificial placenta which grows as the fetus does. A fetus cannot be attached to a foreign placenta."
Okay, there goes that idea, Anakin thought as he grinned inwardly. Still, he kept up his calm facade outwardly.
"I would appreciate that,"
he said. The guide continued down the hallway, and Anakin continued to examine the units. He looked at a small cluster of developing babies, whose forms were developed but whose skin was still translucent, and noticed a small dark speck under the skin of the babies' heads.
"Wait,"
he said to his retreating guide.
"What is that?"
Anakin asked as he pointed to the small speck. The guide walked back up to him and took a moment to examine the fetus.
"That," she answered, "is the inhibitor chip or the control chip. We've installed it in every unit."
"What is its purpose?"
Anakin asked. He didn't like the sound of that.
"It makes the units less aggressive and more obedient than the original host, and also ensures Order 66,
she explained. Order 66? The Jedi never heard anything about this, Anakin thought.
"And what was Order 66?
"It is a program that, when given a specific command from one person, that order would be carried out without question. It was requested in the original order for the army."
The guide looked at him then, slightly confused.
"Did the Jedi not request this?"
"We definitely didn't!" Anakin screamed inwardly. What on earth was something like that doing in the clones? I need more information.
"I would like to see the specifics of this program, if you don't mind."
The guide nodded and again walked away until she was out of hearing range. He turned and studied the floating fetuses, putting the details about the chip's programming out of his head for a while. He was here for Padme and the baby. Other things could wait. Unconsciously, a small smile touched his lips, and he looked at the infants. Some of them almost looked ready to come out and see the world, while others were just starting to develop things like fingers and eyes. He wondered what the child inside Padme looked like right now. He shook himself and began examining the wombs instead of the fetuses. All clear glass cylinders with a domed top, they each had a fleshy cord going from their dock on the shelf to the child. Looks like the mechanical version of an umbilical cord, he mused inwardly. That night, in the quarters that Kaminoans had given him, Anakin pulled out the datapad on the hippocampini race. It was more detailed than the one Obi-Wan had given him that had sparked this whole crazy idea. He tapped one of the electric page markers he'd added before when, in a fit of unrealistic panic, he'd had the insane urge to see what exactly made it possible for the males of the race to carry children. An anatomical drawing of the male popped up. With all the different organs clearly labeled, the pseudo-womb was easily located. The image zoomed in on the organ and text boxes sprang up around the picture with various headings at the top. Anakin spotted one labeled Tissue Structure and started reading. The brood pouch of the hippocampini male has 2 layers, with the outer layer mainly for protection and the inner layer to supply the offspring with needed nutrition. The outer layer is comprised mostly of muscular tissue to provide a strong but flexible haven for the growing young. The inner layer is similar in cellular structure to the placenta in most mammalian species. Both layers of the brood pouch are connected to the rest of the male's body by a dense network of blood vessels and nerves. The blood vessels transport nutrients to the growing young and remove any waste produced by them. The nerves mainly act as sensors to ensure the health and safety of the offspring. Anakin put the pad on his knees and leaned back against the leg of the bed. What he was thinking about was insane. It was unnatural. But a very determined voice whispered in his mind, "It could work. And didn't you say you'd do anything to keep Padme and the baby safe?"
But this is crazy. It won't work,
he mumbled. The fact that the voice was entirely right about that last part didn't matter. The voice wasn't convinced yet, though. "We have the muscle and everything for the outer layer."
And how do you think my body would respond to having new organs inside of it? I can't just add new organs into my body.
None of the tissue would be new. We already have what we need inside. It just needs to be rearranged into a womb. But Anakin was not going to let a crazy voice in the back of his head talk him into something as insane as building a whole new organ inside himself, and one that was never supposed to be included in his decidedly male physiology to begin with. He put the datapad away, slipped on his sleep clothes, and firmly told his mind to be quiet so he could sleep. When he woke the next morning, his guide from the day before was waiting in the doorway with a small handcart behind her.
"Good morning, Master Jedi Anakin,"
she said as she walked into the room, the cart following behind.
"I have brought one of our incubation units for your study, as well as schematics and a manual that explains in depth how to use them. I've also included the details on the control chip and the order we programmed into it."
She gestured toward a small stack of data pads on the cart.
"I hope you will let us know if you need anything else. We are very eager to hear about your findings."
Anakin scoffed eternally at that. They probably wanted to see if they could make a profit by modifying and selling the units to other species. Then she bowed out of the room, leaving the cart behind, and he immersed himself in the materials, blocking out all other thoughts.